This is going to make your rifts explode. Now, I want to go on and preface that this build is definitely not the best build in the game. I know a lot of you all look for in-game specific builds, and this one can kind of work in it, but this is definitely more of a fun build if you want to try it out and just some lower end content. Now, if you haven't clicked off the video yet, I appreciate it, because I honestly think this build is very fun and it is super unique, and nothing else in the game works like this. So to set the scene, this is supposed to be a very aggressive build where you run into a group of enemies, pop your rift, and everything dies. Now, obviously saying that out loud, that doesn't seem like that could be possible since rift's more of a support-based ability, but if you run the right things with the right setups, you can absolutely make that happen. And that is what I want to show you all in this video. So if we just jump right into it, our exotic of choice is going to be the Vesper of Radius. I know it's weird, but just hear me out. This has the exotic perk Planetary Torrent. Rift relief and arc shock wave when cast. Rift energy recharges faster when you're surrounded by enemies. So this does two things. You're going to release that arc shock wave when you cast a rift, which will push enemies back. It does a little bit of damage. It's definitely not the greatest thing, but don't worry, this is just going to be the first part of how we're going to kill enemies with it. But it also does have the second part where your rift energy will recharge faster when you're surrounded by enemies. So this just means playing the game, you're going to have a faster rift cooldown. It's very nice. Now, to actually make this able to kill enemies, we're going to be running the Stasis subclass with the Frost Pulse aspect. So casting your rift generates a shockwave that freezes nearby combatants. So this means now when you pop your rift, you're going to freeze enemies, which is obviously very nice in crowd control in general. But if you run Vesper Radius, that shock pulse wave that comes out of it will actually shatter all the frozen targets you created. You're killing all these enemies with shatter, aka blowing them up, which can also lead to killing other enemies around them if they didn't get froze. So the reason this can't work is when you pop your rift, your freeze actually comes out initially, and then the arc shockwave will come out after the freeze. So you will always shatter the targets 100% of the time, and there's never any weird time where you're not doing it. You will always be able to get this combo off 100% of the time, and it honestly is pretty strong. Now, obviously it doesn't end there. We're going to amplify it even more with things like Glacial Harvest. So when we freeze enemies, we're going to spawn stasis shards around us, which is going to be very nice. You could swap this out to things like Ice Throw Bolts to freeze more enemies if you want to, or even a Bleak Watcher if you want to play into a grenade build just to actually take this more so into in-game content. But I just like running this due to some other mods we're going to take that will synergize well with it. Now I'm running Whisper of Fissures, so this is going to increase the damage and size of the burst of stasis when you destroy a stasis crystal or defeat a frozen target. So this means now when I shatter those frozen enemies, I'm doing more damage, and it can also blow up in a bigger radius to kill more enemies. A main mod of this is Whisper of Refraction, so defeating slowed or frozen targets grants you class ability energy. This is obviously very strong. When you kill those frozen targets, you're going to get more class ability energy back, which is your rift energy. And at some point, if you get into a big enough cluster of enemies, you can simply just cast one rift and you get your whole rift cooldown back with Vesper Radius. It is very, very strong. Whisper of Bond, so defeating frozen targets grants you super energy. You're always going to be killing enemies that are frozen, so you're going to get super energy a lot, and this is going to pair really nice with some of your mods. And finally, Whisper of Rom, so whenever I collect a stasis shard, it grants a small amount of overshield, which falls off after 10 seconds. Collecting additional shards adds the overshield and refreshes the timer. So this is what's playing into Glacial Harvest. Since your main goal is to just run in and pop a rift, this is going to help out with survivability a lot. I do like to run the healing rift as well to keep my health up when I use it. If you run the empowerment rift, it does have a very, very, very slight faster deploy time, so this means you can get it out faster, but I just like running healing rift for the survivability. And again, you can change Whisper of Rom and Glacial Harvest out wherever you want to. That's just what I chose to slot in there, but anything will work. So now with all those fragments and aspects, when you go up to an enemy, you're going to be able to freeze them, do even more damage to that shatter, get some rift energy back, and you're going to be getting a lot of super energy back as well, which is going to be really nice. Now weapons with this build, I would highly recommend running Age Receptor because we're going to be getting our super a lot. It can actually pop its catalyst, so you can drain your super and do a lot of damage with this. It's very good for ad clear and single target damage, but obviously you can run whatever you want to. I would also highly recommend the Tidal SMG or a gun with Wellspring on it, so you can get as much class ability cooldown as possible. This does have the perk Classic Contender, so final blows of this weapon grants class ability energy. Obviously I know all of you don't have this SMG since it is an event based weapon, but if you do, I would recommend running this because it will pair very, very well with this build. Then for heavy, you can also run whatever. I just have a Reed's Red on. Just run whatever is the meta heavy choice at the time. Now for stats, always take 100 recovery. If you can get to 100 resilience, that is good, but you want that 100 recovery so you can get that rift cooldown back as much as possible. If you could also get to 100 intellect to get your super back back even faster, that could be good because we're going to be spamming supers with this build too. Now getting into mods, let's start talking about the helmet, and we're going to be running Dynamo. So this is going to reduce your super cooldown when you're using your class ability near targets. Obviously the point of this build is to run up to enemies and throw your rift down, so you're always going to be near targets, which means you're always going to be proccing double Dynamo, which is giving you a ton of super energy. And then if you remember with our fragments, you're also going to be getting super energy when you kill the frozen targets. So pairing those together, you're just going to have a lot of super energy after casting one rift. Now I am also going to be running Reaping Wellmaker. So after I activate my class ability, your next weapon final blow on a combatant spawns a void elemental well. Elemental wells are great for giving you some extra ability energy back, just so you can make sure you top that rift off. And since you're always casting rifts, you're always going to be making these kills. And if you remember, we're also going to be running the title or a weapon with wellspring, so getting a kill also give you some extra energy as well. Now I am going to be running bountiful wells, so my elemental well mods that cause me to spawn elemental wells can actually stack. If you only have one mod slotted in, this means you essentially just get an extra one. So now Reaping Wellmaker will give me 2 void wells instead of 1, which is obviously good for some extra energy. I do also run a SMG reloader since my main gun is an SMG. Now I do like to run seeking wells, so those wells I spawn, since my gun is spawning the wells, it will spawn them far away, they will track to me, and I can easily pick them up to get some more energy back. Then I like to run Well of Utility, so picking up a void element well will actually give me additional class ability energy. So this means when I spawn those 2 void elemental wells with Reaping Wellmaker and bountiful wells, this is just going to give me even more energy now, and you'll get your back even faster. I do have an insulation on here just so I can reduce the cooldown of my class ability if I pick up an orb of power. If someone's making orbs, that'll be good. And then obviously just for whatever heavy weapons meta, you can slide on a scavenger or a reloader. Now finally, I do have double perpetuation, so I get more class ability cooldown when I use my class ability. This means you're going to get that rift back even faster. I do also have another Well of Utility slotted in, so now the second one will stack with the other one I have equipped, and we're just getting even more rift energy with those void wells. Now that is the main build I run, but I do want to make another recommendation. You can take things like elemental shards if you are playing into Glacial Harvest, so that means your stasis shards will now actually count as elemental wells. And if you run a stasis bond, you could also run double utility kickstart, which essentially does the same thing as perpetuation. So when your class ability energy is fully extended, you gain class ability energy. Utility kickstart is slightly better than perpetuation, but I like to run the void one just so I can take another well of utility. But if you're running elemental shard, you can also take things like Font of Wisdom. So when you pick up an elemental well that matches your subclass type, you essentially are going to be granted 100 intellect, and that means you'll get your super back even faster with things like double dynamo and your fragment Whisper of Bonds. That is if you want to run it like this. You don't have to at all. I honestly like running it the other way just so you can make sure you get that rift back, since they're really heavily playing into the rift in the first place. That's kind of the whole point of the build. But if you do want to play into that super aspect part of it, definitely equip those and you'll get even more supers than you already do with this specific build. But all right, I think that is going to do it for the build. Let me know what you all think about this in the comments below. I know it's definitely not the best in-game build. This doesn't even have any champion mods slotted in. Obviously that also is relying on the season though. We could essentially see champion mods for these specific things, and this could be relatively good. But as of now, this is just a very fun build to try out. The synergies are very strong, and you're going to be able to spam on a lot of rifts and supers pretty much all the time. If you guys would like to try this build out, I will have a dim link to it in the description of this video. If you enjoyed and learned anything new, consider subscribing, dropping a like, and turn those notifications on. Also, if you like joining my Discord or my socials, all of that will be linked in the description as well. But just know watching this video is way more than enough, and that every single bit of support from y'all is truly appreciated. Thank y'all so much for watching this one, and have a great day. Peace.